Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start this webinar welcoming all the attendees and, of course, our speaker, Jeanne Hacquard. So we are here because today we have our third webinar of the series of Unlocking the Potential of XR, Shaping a Pro-Social Metaverse. And these webinars are hosted by Frontiers in Virtual Reality Journal and in collaboration with GuestXR European project that I am the project coordinator. And this series of webinars explores how XR, AI, neuroscience, and social psychologies converge to shape inclusive, accessible, and socially impactful virtual and augmented reality environments. So today we are going to have a presentation and a talk related to enhancing social trust in virtual reality through affective haptic feedback. And we have here our speaker, Jeanne Hacquard, is a second-year PhD student interested in virtual interaction between users. She obtained a master's degree in computer science at the National Institute of Applied Science, as well as a master's degree in the science of informatics at Rennes University. Jeanne recently joined INRIA, where she's working on haptic devices for immersive social communication. So thanks a lot, Jeanne, for being here, and I give you the floor for your presentation. After it, we will be happy to take questions that can be both done by raising your hand, opening your microphone, or if you want, you can also use the chat. Jeanne, please.
Thank you, Simona. So hi, everyone. My name is Jan, and I'm really excited to be here today. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to be talking about social trust in VR, and especially I'm going to be talking about haptic feedback. So here is a small reminder or where I'm from, who's my team. I'm from France, Rennes, if you know a bit from Britain. And so the subject of today's seminar is the haptic feedback. And so what is it basically? Well, here is an example I like world that they used from NASA is one in virtual reality. You usually don't have any other feedback than visual and auditory. And the idea of haptic feedback is to add some tactile sensations or just force feedback. So basically adding information in a new dimension. So how does it work? There are basically two ways of going about it. Is the sensitivity of the skin, so you can feel caresses, vibrations, you can feel the warmth or the cold, and you can also feel the in your muscles, so like the position of your movements, and also some force feedback. So if anyone is pressing on your hand, you will feel it, that kind of thing. This is all haptic feedback. So for example, if you're walking down the street and you see a cat, maybe you'll want to pet it. So it'll start purring, it's vibrating, it's soft, it's warm. And then maybe you can lift it up in your arms and then it's a bit heavy, it's not a kitten. And yeah, that's just a basic haptic interaction. And so one example in daily life is video games with the console that would vibrate if your character gets hit, or when you're driving a car and the wheel can give you some feedback if you're going outside of the road. You can also just basically get notification with vibrations. Well, just to say that haptic feedback is everywhere at this point, and yeah, we'll well used in the daily life. And so on the other side of this presentation is the social trust. And what I want to focus on is what is social trust and how does it work? Well, social trust is the feeling that someone you know is reliable and maybe friendly, is basically a good person, a bit abstract, but yeah, this works mostly on empathy. And what is empathy? There are multiple ways to talk about empathy, but one of the main ways is to separate it between the cognitive empathy and the affective empathy. So cognitive being just understanding how people feel, like seeing one person and being able to tell, oh, they're sad. And affective empathy is more feeling what people feel. So looking at one person and just feeling bad for them. And this all goes to the more compassionate side, the sympathy, or you see someone that is in a bad situation and maybe you want to help, maybe you feel more connected to them. Yes, the social trust part. So first part is an example by Halliburton and and colleagues from a few years back, is the association between emotions and temperature. So you use a small haptic device here attached on the wrist, and then users would do a small presentation in front of a group of live participants and also online participants. And the idea was that usually on Zoom meeting, etc., it's a bit hard to gauge how people are interesting or not by the presentation. And so it's always a bit hard to understand what they're thinking if they're at all paying attention. And so that was the idea behind this paper. And so the idea is just to transmit the emotions directly to this little device, which will translate it to temperature feedback so that the presenter can a bit understand what they're doing right or wrong. This is based on the idea that emotions are usually associated with one type of temperature. So like more negative, low energy emotions will be more on the cold side, and more high energy, high positivity emotions will be more on the warm side. And in that case, they chose to represent warmth with interest and outgoing for the presentation, and cold with disinterest and just looking bored in general. So they have like the computer vision interface that detects the emotions of the participants and just translates that directly to the participant. And then you do like an kind of average emotion analysis of the audience, and then you transmit that in total to the participants. So it's more like a gradient of how interested are they. And then participants reported it to help. It's a bit stressful because if it goes cold all of a sudden, you're like, oh no, why are people not interested? But also it makes you feel more connected, more present, and it help them understand what they were really doing right when presenting. So that's the first part, just basic understanding of what's going on. And the second part is more on the conveying and directly transmitting the emotions to participants. The first example in that is a paper recently published by Philippe et al. And me, where we were working on relaxing users, helping them combat stress and remain focused when in a context of really stressful cognitive, high cognitive situation. So people would be plunged into a VR virtual environment where they would have to do kind of a competitive, uh, high s- high stakes, rapid maths equations, and they would just be ranked basically between each other. And the idea was that you have to do good. And so we basically try to stress users And then we use the haptic device strapped to their back to try and basically cool them down and help them keep a calm heartbeat, calm head, just try and focus on the task and stay on point. It worked kinda. Basically, we hypothesized that the cold would work better, and it did. It didn't. It was a bit more nuanced than that. Of course, it's not black and white. But basically, the more people like the cold in general, the more it worked. And it's not just on. So it worked on the stress and on the thermal comfort. So they felt just generally more comfortable with the temperature. And also it work on the perceived emotions during the task. So this is a graph of emotions. On the x-axis is more on the pleasantness of the emotion, and the y-axis is more on how intense, how activated the person was during the emotion. So very low excitement, very low pleasantness would be like bored or just sad in general, and very high would be excited. And so we saw that in general, again, for people who prefer cool feedback, they were more relaxed and just felt better with cold feedback instead of warm or neutral feedback. So that was interesting, and it really demonstrated that that sometimes haptic feedback can help with just feeling better. And so we tried the other way around. We tried to convey feelings of aggression, social pressure, proxemics kind of, and just trying to see if people could feel threatened by a virtual avatar that was basically non-existent. So this is a poster that we published recently by Smeka Hotel, and we used a compressive belt that you can see here. It's very simple. Basically, it's a rotating motor strapped to the back of the user, and that motor, well, rotates, and it's attached to an elastic band that just compresses the user's abdomen. And so while it compresses slowly or not, the users would be in a virtual environment in like a dark, kind of small side streets, and they would be approached by an avatar that would either look like neutral, just walking towards them, or that would look kind of drunk, kind of angry, and generally aggressive. And when the users would feel uncomfortable, they were asked to press a button, stop the avatar, stop the scene. And so we repeated that a few times. And what we noticed is that, of course, when the avatar was angry, users uh, would be faster in reacting. But also when the belt was acting, people would feel threatened sooner. They would feel more present in the scene. The avatar would seem more threatening, basically, and he would look as if he was coming in sooner and faster and generally being more dangerous looking. So that was really interesting. And this is also a work that we used the compressive belt in. This was more on trying to connect specifically to people, trying to transmit the emotion of one person, and just actually trying to see if we could change the total behavior of one participant. And so we used the scene of the virtual meeting where there was a presenter that was a virtual presenter controlled by a computer, and she would try and do like a small presentation, like usual meeting with other colleagues and the users sitting in a corner. And basically, the presentation would not go well. The colleagues would be mean, kind of just ignoring her, looking bored, looking busy doing something else. And also, the presenter would have technical problems. She'd be having a hard time just doing the presentation, feeling more and more stressed. And we try to transmit all that stress to the user, just basically making them feel more stressed for the presenter. And yeah, just empathic concern. So, are you okay? Am I okay? Are we okay? That kind of thing. And for that, we used the physical simulation of stress. And so we just went back to the basics. What can we simulate that kind of feels like stress? And so the heartbeat would accelerate when you're stressed, and then maybe you'll breathe faster. You'd feel a bit constrained. You just feel your body going out a bit. And so that was what we tried to do. Basically, we used two haptic devices here and here. So the first one was the compressive belt that I talked about before, the same rotating motor attached to an elastic belt but this time it didn't just compress, it went back and forth to simulate breathing. And just the more the presenter was stressed, the more it would accelerate and just basically force the users to breathe faster. And the second one was just a small actuator on the wrist that would simulate heartbeat, just vibrating in rhythm with an accelerating roar beat. So we went from 60 to 120 BPM. And similarly, for the compressive belt, we accelerate by a few rotations per minute. With all of that, we managed to we had some nuanced results as well. It's not that simple, of course, but we did get some good results on the empathy and the fact that the more users were feeling stressed, they were actually feeling stressed for the presenter as well. And we had some good results on behavioral measures where people would want to help the presenter, and even if they didn't really know what to do, they just felt sometimes more connected to the presenter, and they would just feeling bad basically. Yeah, this was an interesting experiment to do. So yeah, this was one of the examples that the user could help. The presenter, just lost the battery of her laser pointer, so she can't change slides anymore. She's trying to ask for help or anything, and everyone's ignoring her. She's not feeling so good, and the participants can just choose to give her some help. Yeah, that was one of the examples. And yeah, this experiment, I wouldn't say it's conclusive as to what we can do specifically, but it's more of what can we do? We can use basically what we think of if it helps with immersion and embodiment and the feelings of presence in the virtual environment, then we can help we can help users feel more connected toward a virtual agent and then maybe toward another person. It's also, of course, it's a bit more complicated than that, but yeah, that's the idea. Another point I want to touch on is the idea, well, social trust I introduced before, and how we can play on that. So again, social trust is not that easy to play with. You have to create feelings of trust between two people that already know each other. And so you can't really do that so artificially, but what you can do is foster the impression that one person is charismatic or more reliable or more convincing, or maybe they look more friendly. And of course, you can try to do that with visual or more behavioral type of control of virtual agents or avatars. But it's really complicated, especially in VR, especially with the uncanny valley situation. And so we wanted to try to use haptic devices to transmit the feeling that this person is more reliable. Of course, um it's not this type of manipulation where the person will fully believe in one another. It's more of a very consensual uh thing, or where participants just sit down and say, well, okay, this is interesting, I want to hear more. So yeah, the paper in question is on persuasive vibrations by Saint-Aubert et al., a member of our team. And the idea was to use vibrations to support the verbal communication between users and virtual agents. And so the protocol itself was very simple. Users would just sit in a chair in front of two virtual agents, and the two virtual agents would discuss very random debates. And just the green agent would defend one side, the blue agent would defend another side, and then one of the two avatars, and one of the two agents at random, was supported by vibrations. So the audio of what he was saying would be directly transmitted to the vibrator, which would vibrate in the hand of users. And we also did a second experiment in the other direction, which was, can we support the communication of users? So users would speak to the agents, and they would have a microphone, they would be recorded, and the audio of that recording would be live, directly fed into the actuator for vibrations. It was really interesting, the results. We found that the presence of the avatar was heightened mostly when they were speaking. So if the two avatars were speaking and one had vibrations, the one with the vibrations had more presence, basically. They seem more present, they seem more charismatic, they seem more convincing, even if what they were saying wasn't really anything any more convincing than the other avatar. We tried to switch just to see if it changed, and it didn't change the results. And it goes also in the reverse, which meant that if users said something with the vibrations, they all said the same thing. We fed them the speech, and the vibrations really helped them, well, first of all, feel more present in the scene, but also feel more convincing, maybe a bit more charismatic, also. But mostly, we well, I can't talk too much about it because it is not published yet. The paper is under review, but we wanted to work on the feelings of connections and, yeah, the trust that you can get with another virtual agent or a virtual user, just from having some effective haptic feedback between the two of you. Uh, this is more of a future works kind of thing, but we have many use cases in the GuestXR project. And so we have a few ideas in mind. One of the first use cases is on the global warming environmental change awareness, which is a very important subject right now. And so maybe we are trying to add some effective haptic feedback to just help participants grasp the situation and how important it is to make a change now. And yeah, just try to stress the importance of the situation and how critical, uh, yeah, how everything is bad right now and it could get worse, that kind of thing. Of course, we could also work on conflict resolution, which I think would be really interesting to work with the vibrations, just trying to see how it would influence people, how they would get maybe more or less argumentative, uh, how like an important debate would change in results. Um, and also there are some more medical slash social applications for example, hearing impaired participants, but also people with oral comprehension disabilities like ADHD, autism, that kind of thing. Of course, this is not like limited to that those use cases, but I think in that idea, the empathy and social trust concepts are really important, especially right now, and we really need to try and use them more. Just as a small reminder of everything, we've seen three main ideas, and the thing is that the two first ones, cognitive and affective empathy, are more in the understanding how the others feel part, and then the important part is just translating to that I want to do something, I want to act, I feel close enough to that person to want to help them, because it's really easy to have the issue of just sidelining and just being, oh, I'm just a side character, I can't do anything. And that's one of the main issues right now of people just don't feel uh they just don't feel concerned or anything. They're just not part of the problem, and so they don't think about it. And yeah. Thank you to all my co-authors and co-writers and everyone I've worked with, and yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks a lot, Jean, for your presentation. It was super comprehensive, apart from what I already knew from your technologies developments. You also inserted the new one. So is there any question from the audience? Let me check if there is any in the chat.
Oh, it's a great question. Thank you, Ivan.
Okay.
So there are so many ways to do that, so it's a bit hard to answer in one question. But basically, neurodivergent, if you're thinking about autism and ADHD, for example, well, as I said, you can work on more of the uh, oral comprehension part, which is a very big issue for neurovision people because it's hard to stay concentrated and just process things that you hear. But also the vibrations were we had a really cool effect that people had um, higher focus when having the vibrations. So you could have like multiple persons speaking, and if one of them had the vibration, they would be easier to focus on that person. And even if there was only one person, you would have like less trouble staying focused on what they were saying. which I know is a really big issue for ADHD. Autism is also interesting. I mean, it would be also interesting to work on effective haptics for autistic people because it's really easy for autistic people to be overstimulated. And so it's not easy to just say, let's add more stimulation, because sometimes it can be too much. And so you have to work on customization because everyone is different, and also what kind of feedback can work best. Right, similarly, the paper is not yet published, it's under review, but we've been working on comparing different kinds of effective feedback just to see which one works better in a social interaction context. And we noticed that a lot of people, and oftentimes neurodivergent people, don't really like vibrations because they're deemed too aggressive or just too strong, even if like the volume is pretty low. And on the other side, thermal feedback, so like warm or maybe cold for some people, would be more welcome. It would be more comfortable, and then the social interaction would be perceived more positively. So, yeah, it can help like in a lot of different ways. So I'm not sure I answered your question. I hope I did, but please tell me if I didn't.
Thanks a lot for this
Uh,
uh, interesting
yeah,
answer. Something to add?
so psychotherapy, I'm not sure. Like, you mean therapy in general for anxiety or that kind of thing? Well, I'll let you answer that. For PTSD, it's a bit more complicated because, I'm not a therapist. I don't have like a really strong background. So it's a bit more serious matter that I can't say for sure without speaking to someone, but there have been papers on just using it for PTSD, yes, mostly VR, of course, but I can see effective haptics being a really great addition to that because the idea of PTSD is that you have trauma from certain situations that were very dangerous for yourself, maybe for others. So they can't just be recreated, and maybe sometimes thinking about them even is hard. It's hard to have like a daily life from that. And so just there have been advancements on the idea of just recreating that situation, but in a safe manner. And so VR works pretty well for that. And the problem with VR is that sometimes it doesn't work. So some people, it can't be as realistic as the real thing. And then effective haptics would help either adding realism or calming people down, having something to focus on. For example, thermal haptics, they have been used a lot I mean, a lot. They have been used in medical situations, so like cryotherapy or just having a warm compress, and it helps with the pain. Half because it can help like the muscles relax, the body relax, but also because it helps having something comforting to focus on. And so for PTSD, I could see application of that, of the situation is pretty bad and you could be having a panic attack, but you have that feedback to focus on that kind of breaks away from the situation. Well, of course, you'd have to test it. So, uh, um, is it possible to effectively simulate a handshake using this technology? I thought, yeah,
You,
sure.
Jan, are amazing. You don't need a moderator. You are asking yourself and then
Oh, yeah.
replying to the questions. So I'm super happy to. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, it is possible to use to simulate a handshake. I mean, it's a bit complicated because the hands are very different for everybody. I personally have very small hands, and so if you want to create that kind of device, you have to make it accessible and customizable for everyone, which can be a bit of a pain. And also it needs to wrap around the hand, and it needs to compress a bit, maybe add warmth because the person you're touching is warm. So that's a lot of devices together, and it sounds complicated, but also interesting. So definitely possible. Let's see what it does. So thank you for Ivan and Mel for the question. And hi, Andra. So first of all, thank you for your interesting talk. Thank you. Do you estimate the resolution of vibrotactile feedback? How many different levels of empathy can I measure with different vibrotactile stimuli? So that's a really interesting question. Actually, we're working on it. We asked ourselves the same question, like how can we play with the stimuli and how can we change the levels of connections and maybe too strong, like it can be too strong or it can be too low for people to react, or you can just have like some kind of, oh, that guy seems nice or that guy is really interesting. It's really interesting how you can play with it. So we don't know yet, but yeah, we're trying to play with it a bit. And we're also trying to play with different haptic feedback just to see if it can like resonate with vibrotactile stimuli. And we also have had some interesting results on that side. So I would say it's definitely a work in progress, but yeah, it definitely has potential. So thank you for your question.
Thanks a lot. There is another one. Do you work with startups? I am building a pilot for sexual trauma survivors to learn interpersonal skills, and I would love to find out if this could be helpful.
Hi, so thank you, Padmaja, for your great question. It's actually, yeah, it definitely could be helpful. I mean, I personally, I don't have like anything against or for startups. I don't particularly work with them, but I think it would be a great idea to indeed add some effective haptic feedback for your starter, because yeah, the idea of having trauma and also learning interpersonal skills would really benefit from having some of the social touch just to help during like a situation of panic, or maybe a situation where you need comfort, you need to focus, you need to feel more confident. There are basically an infinite uh, amount of possibilities that you can things that you can do just to help. And just to start, basically, if you want to try the idea, just feel like you're thinking about how you have a bad day and like it's raining outside, it's really cold, and so you get on the couch and you have like a kind of blanket and you get a hot chocolate. And that's my idea of like a comforting situation in the bad situation. And so many people associate that with comfort, that kind of warmth. And so if you want to try it, you can just get people like a cold glass of water or warm compress, just warm hot bottle that can hug to themselves during the training that you're doing. And I think it could have great effect.
So, this is Padmaja. Thank you for responding. How would I work with you? Who should I contact? What is the process?
Um, I mean, personally, I don't know if I can work with you, because I would have to ask my boss, but you can, I think you can just basically start by yourself, just trying to see what you can do. And oh yeah, there's basically yeah, there's an email address that you can reach out to. Thank you, Marina.
Okay, thank you. So one more question. Are these devices available? I'm sorry, I just joined late, so I missed some of your presentation. Are these devices available, or is it we just purchase on our own?
Oh, well, the devices I showed here are public. So the papers are published, and so you can just access the papers and basically recreate the devices if you want. They're kind of one of a kind prototypes, so they're not for sale or anything. And you have or you could just hire someone to recreate them if you're not like on the technological side. But it's very simple technology, so it's very easy to recreate. The the device shown here are pretty simple. But
Thank
again,
you.
you can start with a level under that, which is just using non-technological haptic feedback. So a hot bottle, a hot mug of chocolates, that kind of thing would just work probably
Yeah,
just fine also.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there is another question from Mel. Vision and auditory devices are general. Any kind of visual and auditory display can be done with one device. However, every type of haptics requires another device. Is there any way to overcome this problem?
Hi, Mel again. Thank you for your question. It's a really big question in the community of can we do like that one device that does everything? Of course we can't, but that's also the thing that you can do any kind of visual and auditory display, but haptic is so versatile that it's hard to centralize in one device. Well, you can like add multiple types of haptic devices together. Of course, you can do thermal and vibrotactile together. You can press and have vibrations. You can add things together, but yeah, it's hard to have one thing that would work in all kinds of situations. What you can do is compensate. So in VR, for example, you have what's called pseudo haptics, is a way of compensating for the lack of real tactile feedback with a sort of a visual illusion that would make it feel as if you had some feedback. So just having your hand slow down when you're pushing up against an object, as if the object itself was resisting the push, and then you feel as if the object is heavy. That kind of thing you can do. You can work on the visual and auditory side to compensate for the lack of haptic or tactile feedback. And you can also work on haptic illusions, which are a bit complex as well. For example, working on just vibrotactile to simulate a caress. Um, you can you can do illusions to overcome this, but I wouldn't say it's a perfect fix. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Um, I have a last curiosity. You know, in virtual reality, you always consider the part of the vision and the audio, of course. You extended it to the touch, there is vibration, and also the thermal sensation and so on. Can you extend it to the five sense? Like, are you, can you see in the future also, for example, considering smell or?
Yeah, actually, there have been some examples already of trying to add like the taste and the smell to feedback. It's a bit complicated, of course, because, well, the nose you can do, but like the mouth is really invasive. What you can do is trick actually people. You can trick users because the mouth and the nose are really close, very connected. So if you smell something, you can kind of taste it, and vice versa sometimes. One great example is by well, I don't remember the name of the paper exactly, but it was by Pedro Lopez's team, which it was in VR, and basically they had like a small device attached here around the nose, and it would push smells directly into the nose, so olfactory feedback. It was really fun. The paper was really fun, and the idea was to simulate thermal feedback, thermal sensations with olfactory feedback. So they would like breathe some capsaicin, some like hot pepper odor in the nose, and then people would feel hot. And then on the other side, they would do like some very fresh mint thing, and people would feel cold. So yeah, there have been some examples of that, which I found really fun. I would say it's a bit harder to have like a practical use, but not everything has to be directly practical. So
Okay, thanks a lot, Jan, for this nice talk. I do not see any other question. Thanks again for your presentation. I would like to advise that we will have a next event that will be dedicated to the study of the co-presence in the GuestXR project with the VR United. And it will be presented by Ramon Oliva. You have here in the chat, Marina just posted the event, so we will be really glad to have all of you also to our next workshop. And with a few minutes in advance, I would like just to thank you all and close the meeting.
thank you again for coming.